For all the latest from the world of motoring, hit that subscribe button and stay connected.
The Ducati Multistrada 1200S is one of the best that Ducati has to offer and is one machine that you just cannot ignore. Vinayak brought home his Multi in 2015 and joins us today to share his ownership experience. Hi Vinayak, it's great to have you here. So you have the Multistrada 1200S at a Ducati, and a lot of people want to own a Ducati. Now there are a lot of adventure-ready motorcycles in India. How did you choose the Multistrada and how has your experience been with it?
Yeah, so it's been 3 years since I bought this bike, nearly 3 years.
Okay.
2015 December is when I bought this, and that's when Ducati had launched the DVT engine, which was a big bang leap from the previous edition. Absolutely no regrets, just love this motorcycle. And it really is a sports tourer, even though it's in the same segment as say a GS 1200 and a Tiger. This one is pure performance. And you can munch the highway miles. I've done trips now all over South India, and it's been pure joy, especially once you hit the twisties. Even though this looks like a big bike, 230 kilos, once you get going, it's very nimble. So when I was actually in the market researching what bikes were available, I had narrowed it down to 3 different bikes. One was of course the Multistrada, the GS 1200, and then the Triumph Tiger. As I was telling you, this bike was a big leap in terms of technology. So that was the major appeal. If you compare this to the other 2 options, at that point, this was way ahead in terms of technology. So, if you look at some of the things like Skyhook suspension, then the Bosch inertial measurement unit. So, whole bunch of sensors which are supposed to keep you safe.
And a whole bunch of tech that is not available on any other.
Absolutely. And again, the looks, I would always rate a Ducati much higher than the BMW and the Triumph Tiger. Though if you're looking for a pure off-roader, which I was not looking for, maybe you would go for a Tiger or a GS 1200. So those were some of the factors, and I just zeroed in, and especially at the price point that they launched it at, I think it was almost too good to be true. So I just grabbed it.
Okay, now clearly you're already very happy with the machine with 3 years of ownership. Now let's talk about the performance. The Multistrada has a lot of performance-oriented features, a lot of performance-oriented engine. Basically performance-oriented engine, and it has the racing DNA. How has your experience been with it?
So when it comes to performance, that's where the bread and butter of the Ducati is. And this bike, it's not let me down even once on the highway. So definitely the performance is there. It's very reliable. And I'll tell you a little bit about the different modes on this bike. We spoke about the 4 souls of the bike. The first one is the sports mode. So in the sports mode, you have the full 160 horsepower of power delivery. And what differentiates the sports mode and the touring mode, both of them are 160 horsepower. But in the sports mode, it's a very direct and aggressive power delivery.
Very sharp throttle.
Very sharp, on the money, and it's a very linear power curve. In the touring mode, you need it a little more gentle on the highway, so it's more progressive.
It doesn't push you back.
It's a progressive feel. It's not as violent as it's like being on the racetrack. So that's the main difference. And then when you come down to the other modes, urban and enduro, the bike actually comes down to 100 horsepower. So it's much more manageable. The throttle is less snatchy, and it's when you're in the stop-go traffic, close bumper traffic, you don't want too much power.
You don't need it.
You won't enjoy it, and actually it's detrimental to have that much power. In terms of the off-road capability as well, as I was telling you, it's not a pure off-road, but they've built in some amazing features in the engine. For example, if you're in a very steep incline, or say there is some slush around, and you're scared to touch the throttle and play with the clutch, all you need to do is pop it into first gear or second gear, let go of the clutch, let go of the throttle. Okay, and the bike just coasts you through, and it's not going to switch off.
Okay.
Right.
You don't have to be worried about stalling.
Yeah. So it's almost like riding an Africa Twin without, worrying about the clutch. You don't need to be burning the clutch. A lot of people burn the clutch on these bikes. These are big bikes. A lot of torque. You don't need to actually play too much with the clutch. But it takes some confidence to trust the engine. But once you get to that point, slow speed, just stand up and let your weight sink onto the pegs and play with the handlebar.
And that's really helpful.
That's some brilliant engineering that these guys have come up with. So, if you're in second gear, you're not doing anything with the throttle, you've let the clutch go. It's going to coast at say 22, 23 kilometers per hour.
Just figuring out.
Yeah, you can focus on the road ahead, So, they've tried to do in their bit on the off-road part. I think they're still working on it to catch up with the BMW in terms of off-road. But again, it's purely a maniac on the highway to call it that. 160 horsepower. It does about 250 kilometers per hour. I've actually taken this bike on the track as well. It's surprisingly nimble on the track. Once you have speed, you can get your knee down quite easily on the bike. So if you look at this bike, you'd never think that you'd be able to get your knee down. But it can actually keep up with the super bikes as well. It's not going to be too far behind.
Speaking about that, out on the highway, what are the comfortable cruising speeds? What speeds do you just keep and you can just keep going?
So what I typically cruise at, because our highways are a little bit unpredictable unlike the West. So when you're cruising at say 130, 140, you'll really enjoy it, as well as you are in a safe zone. The Brembo 330s can definitely slow you down and save you.
So just set it in the cruise control. And
you have a cruise control mode, just set it and then enjoy the music.
Watching out,
yeah. It's a beautiful package. I would say power and then the frills that they built in terms of the modes. Definitely they have put in a lot of effort, and I don't know how they're going to improve it from here on, but already the 1260 is out and they've improved the mid-range in that by about 20%. So phenomenal in terms of performance.
What tank range are you getting?
Tank range, that's a good one. We always deal with this question. It's asked in a more crude way, like kitna deti hai. The mileage on this bike is totally up to how you ride it. On a full tank of gas, it's about 18-liter tank. If you're riding very aggressively, it can even drop to, your range would go to about 150 kilometers. But if you're cruising and not going crazy on the rev, you'll easily do about 280 km on a full tank of gas. Close to 300 km.
Okay, now you said this is like a highway king, but Ducati have positioned this as a take it anywhere motorcycle, a proper adventure motorcycle. But so let's get into details of that. How is it on the different types of terrain? You told about road, but now how is it off road? How is it in the city? To be specific, does the weight get to you? And off road, how is it off road? Not just gravel patches, but proper off road.
So that is a very interesting question that you've posed, and let me try to answer it mode by mode. They have 4 modes on the bike. First one being the sport mode. So if you see the tire setup, it's a 190/55 at the rear, which is a typical superbike rear tire. And the front, again, you have a 120/70 and a 17-inch rim. So again, absolutely engineered for, you can take it on the track and straight away ride it as if it was a superbike. It can handle that. That's where it's at its best, I would say. Then coming to the touring mode, when you're on the highway, again this configuration works perfectly. Spot on. Our kind of highways, the highways actually, if you look at it from 15 years back, most of our highways are in a very good shape, and you can enjoy these tires, and definitely it allows for that performance and safety as well. Coming to the other aspects of off-roading as well as city, based on the setup itself, you can see that it's not totally geared for off-roading.
Yeah.
First of all, it has a 17-inch front wheel.
It's not going to be comfortable.
Yeah, and smaller front wheel which has mag wheels. It doesn't have spoke wheels.
Okay.
The newer, I think the Enduro version,
Yeah, it has. Okay.
and the 950 comes with an option of spoke wheels. But just the way it is set up, it's not ideal for off-roading. So it can handle your country roads, your back roads.
Yeah,
Kacha
Kacha roads essentially.
Kacha roads, and also like if you're riding in your farm or something like that, it's perfectly fine. But when things get a little more hardcore, there are 2-3 things which are totally working against the bike.
Okay.
One is it's a top-heavy bike.
Okay.
Just the L-twin configuration makes it uncomfortable for slow speed riding.
Okay.
So it's actually a struggle to be riding it at slow speed, and you would rather be on a much smaller engine, say a 400 or even
To really
even
have fun
smaller.
off-road.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the reasons I haven't had the confidence to take this bike to say Ladakh or Leh. Because one is it's 230 kgs of metal, which is great when you're doing over 100 kilometers per hour. But if you're like negotiating potholes,
With luggage, everything's going
and
to
if
be
roads are slushy, you're dealing with the dead weight of the bike. So off-roading is definitely not its sweet spot.
Okay.
It's great for back roads, and if you have a mix of gravel and sand and a little bit of tarmac, you can really have fun with it.
Just slide down the rear.
You just put it into enduro mode, ABS switches off. But again, it's such a heavy bike, and being a Ducati,
You always have that thought.
it's going to be there at the back of your head that the fairings are going to get scratched if it falls. It's not like the GS, just because of the boxer configuration. Even if it does tip over, like the off-roading spills are not usually high speed.
Yeah.
But even a slow speed fall, you're going to end up damaging a lot of things on the bike. So it's going to really hurt you, right? The hand guards, of course you have the crash guard which you can add on, but still you're risking this beautiful paint.
Now on the road, now you said you use it mostly on road. Now how the suspension set up for road use? Like, is it soft like for touring, or of course you can change it on the go, right?
Yeah. So when it comes to configuring or parameterization, the Italian guys have really taken it to another level on this bike.
Okay.
It's almost like a supercomputer on this bike. Okay. So I'll take you through some of the things later in terms of the engine parameterization.
Okay.
But suspension itself, there are different things that can be adjusted. Of course, your front suspension is adjustable electronically.
Okay.
Your rear suspension on the Multistrada 1200S, which this model is, comes with a Öhlins semi-active suspension.
Okay.
So on the fly, based on the riding conditions,
You can change the mode.
based on the rider weight,
You can.
yeah, actually the suspension is doing the work for you. Dynamically, it's adjusting a lot of things like your compression,
Okay.
your
On the
spring
go,
load.
it adjusts
Yeah,
itself.
it adjusts.
Okay. Nice.
So on top of that, if you do want to stiffen the suspension or soften it, or they have some default settings as well, which is somewhere in between. It's the mid part.
Okay.
Based on a average rider's weight and
requirement.
ergonomics. So there's a lot of things you can play with. You can also adjust the suspension for a single rider with luggage, single rider and pillion, and then single rider, pillion and luggage. So there's a lot of things you can play around with. So electronics, as I said, is something that they've really worked on in the 2015 model. If you see the 2014 edition and 2015, there are 2 or 3 things.
Okay.
One is the electronics package, the DVT, and then the Skyhook system.
Okay.
Along electronics, as I was talking about, is driven by the Bosch IMU.
Okay.
So it's spot on in terms of adjusting the suspension, the spring preload, how stiff you want the spring to be. Even on the softest setting, so far, touch wood, I've never had a scenario where the suspension has bottomed out.
Okay.
So it's
and it's got good ground clearance as well. So
very good.
So no issues with that anyway.
So especially for our roads where things are very unpredictable, this bike will have you sorted out as far as the
Fast
suspension
and safe.
goes.
And comfortable.
Safety, I think if you look at the class that it's in, it's right at the top. It's got Brembo 330mm discs, as well as it's almost close to MotoGP technology if you look at it, the front brakes. It's like two parachutes trying to stop the bike when you need it. Okay, and it's got ABS, it's got cornering ABS. So safety and your suspension setup and performance, these are the strong points of this bike.
And how about the stock tires that come with the bike? Are they, I think they're more again for road use, right?
Yeah, the stock tires are the Scorpion 2 from Pirelli. These are brilliant tires, and I wouldn't dream of trying any other tires, though some of them have tried the Michelin P4s and things like that, which are okay for your highway riding. But if you want to really tap the performance, these are the tires that you need on the bike. You wouldn't want to deviate from these. Yeah, if you are going off-road, maybe you can consider going for a slimmer profile, but there are not many options because on a 190 rear and a 120 in the front.
But when you change it up, you have issues with traction control. You have changes.
The bike is geared up to be ridden stock. When we are talking about performance, I have to tell you this. I had done a lot of performance modifications on the bike. I had a exhaust from a company, Italian boutique brand called MIV. I had a power commander. I had an auto tune module. I had the quick shifter. And I still have the K&N air filter. So these are all things that I did away with because the bike just runs like a dream stock. It sounds beautiful. It's got that lovely burble and backfire, especially when you're in the right temperature. It's a beautiful bike stock. Don't try and do any mods.
Just keep it stock.
Just keep it stock. People have put Akrapovic exhausts and Termis. I would say those things give you a headache after some time.
But touring, you don't want a loud exhaust. Essentially.
And it sounds beautiful as it is.
Now, we had Ducati owners before, and when it comes down to the maintenance part, everybody gives you a naughty smile. Because only in the past, we already know that it's going to be a costly affair. So how has the Multistrada 1200S been?
Yeah, so that's the big one, right? You've bought the bike and invested a whole lot of money, and what does it cost to actually maintain it? See, I actually come from, as I said, the superbike background, and I had a lot of Japanese bikes in the past. It was almost 20 years of riding. So this bike hasn't been very different in terms of regular maintenance. A superbike is expensive to maintain. The consumables like the tires, the brake pads, the clutch plates, those are all expensive affairs. But those are periodic maintenance. Overall, the bike has been very reliable. And the bike came with 2 years of manufacturer warranty. And now Ducati has provided the Ducati Red extended warranty program. So 4 years of warranty itself, that shows they have a lot of confidence in the product which they've sold. And credit to them, I'm part of the Ducati Owners Club, and there are considerable number of Multistradas. No real mechanical or electronic, because it has so much of electronics. We haven't really had too many issues. There have been the odd occasion where you get an information alert on the LCD screen, but all that involves is taking it to the VST service center, and then they plug it into your scanner, diagnostics, and then they actually analyze the error. If it is something serious, they would take action on it. Thankfully, none of us have had anything major. Sometimes, the brake switch, there may be some loose contact and things like that. So that requires some minor adjustments. And then you just reset it and you're on your way. So in terms of maintenance, I would say what really sets you back is your tires. You're talking about 35,000 for a set of tires. Brake pads are painfully expensive on this bike. And especially being such a performance-oriented bike, and when you do late braking from your high speeds,
you tend to run
you chew up your brake pads. And that is something which I found compared to my Japanese bikes. It costs almost 20,000 bucks to do a brake pad replacement front and back. But if you look at, say, an R1, it would cost you half of that. So Of course, now there are aftermarket options. The stock ones come on Brembo. Now you can go for an EBC, which has equally good bike.
Yeah, the double edge ones.
Yeah, exactly. So it's something that you have to factor in
While
when you pick up the bike. You're looking at least an annual service.
Yeah, so I think service intervals are quite great on the Multi. I think
Absolutely.
14,000 if I'm not
It's
mistaken.
about so the first service is at 1,000 kilometers. So that's when you
the-
just bring
yeah,
it in
yeah.
and they change the oil. The next service is at 15,000.
15,000.
Yeah, so you have a 14,000 km interval, and then the next one is the big one, which is at 30,000.
The
It's a Desmo service.
Okay.
So at the Desmo service, it involves a lot of labor actually. So that's why it's expensive service. They completely open up the head and then check the valve timing and whatever is required in terms of bringing it back to its stock, like when it came out of the factory. So when you're actually riding it, I'm still 10,000 kilometers away from that. I'm not really looking forward to that milestone because Desmo service is expensive. It costs around 30,000, around 60,000 to do the Desmo service, including your labor and parts.
And how is the service center asset? You talked about VST. How are they in terms of support and helping?
Yeah. So to just tell you, this bike I bought it in Bombay.
Okay.
So 2015 December, VST, which is the Bangalore dealer, had just about opened up, and they required 3 months to bring the bike down at that point. So I decided to buy it in Bombay. But right from day one of my ownership experience, it's been with VST.
Okay.
And actually, surprising, I thought, because of the previous experience with Ducati, I had a hypermotard before this.
Yeah, but that was not well sorted.
It was absolutely a disaster. And
the showroom shut down.
And I really credit Ducati for the way they've reinvented themselves. And I think the support in terms of after sales, spare parts, it's there. I'm not saying that if you need some part which may have broken down, it's going to be delivered to you in the next 1 week. Sometimes they have to get the part from Italy. There's a logistics time lead. It has to go through customs. But overall, I think the VST guys are doing a very good job. And we have been fortunate in Bangalore that we have a good mechanic there, Mr. Ragesh. He's taking care of all the bikes. He has a support team. And Ducati is investing in making sure that the team is taken from here to the Thailand factory.
Okay.
Literally 3 or 4 times a year, they're taken to the factory and given a real low-down refresher. And it's not a one-time affair.
Okay.
So the bike is constantly improving as they release the new models. Now you have the Panigale, the V4. So it's a whole new technology which has come in, right? So
even the 1260s, there are stuff that is
exactly.
different,
What's nice is that Ducati is not leaving the customers, with their hands in the air, wondering what to do in case something goes wrong. They are actually technically equipping the service center, and VST is doing a good job. So far, touch wood, I've not had any issues. There was the one issue I had was when I rode to Ooty. And on the way back, I had the slave cylinder on the clutch actually had an issue.
Okay.
So I didn't have any action on my clutch.
Okay.
And even though I was almost 2 weeks out of warranty, VST made the case and presented it to Ducati Italy, and they replaced the clutch
in warranty.
Under warranty at no extra cost.
Awesome.
So those kind of things,
small things add up.
Yeah, small things add up, and it gives a positive ownership experience.
Okay, now we already went through a bit on what all you've done with the bike and how you reported back to stock. But I still see a lot of changes. And do you suggest any changes to prospective owners? Something that makes the bike ownership experience better.
Yeah. So we spoke about the performance mods that I had on the bike.
Okay.
So there is already a whole lot of electronics on this bike. Okay. So you don't want to be really playing with that because you don't. As I said, it's connected to an IMU from Bosch. So the moment you tinker with the electronics, you're splicing wires, you're leaving things to chance. The reliability of the bike comes under a question mark.
Okay.
So based on the advice from VST and Ragesh, who's the chief mechanic there, I reverted back to stock on performance. But Ducati themselves have a performance package.
Okay.
Where you can have a Termignoni exhaust, a full system exhaust, and without much of piggyback aids like the Power Commander Auto Tune, they simply give you a USB, there is a slot to plug in the USB, and the map required for the term
is
automatically sent to the ECU.
Okay.
So there's not much you need, like in the old days of the R1 and R6. You'd be sitting with a laptop,
you're trying to figure out.
You do a lap in the track and you come back and things like that. That's like...
You check out the curves and...
Exactly. You need a lot of effort, and there's that human aspect of getting it right and wrong. Here, because it's all done in the factory, you're just plugging in the map and then you're good to go. Personally, my recommendation is stick with the stock setup.
And just basic crash protection.
Don't waste your money.
Okay.
Use that money for things like insurance, tires, and the regular maintenance. Exactly, going places, travel. It's a great bike. You don't need to make this into an out and out super sport. Okay, so...
And can you take us through the crash protection that you've done?
Yeah.
I see extra Denali lights as well, and so...
Yeah, so there are some bits and bobs which I added over a period of time. The first thing I did, which I highly recommend, is get the crash protection, the crash bars. Okay. So there are a couple of manufacturers who supply this. Okay. So Ducati, I think, has tied up with SW Motec. I picked this up at VST itself.
Okay.
Along with the crash guard, I also have a center stand. So it makes maintenance a lot easier. Just small things like the chain lubrication, and supposing you want to tighten up something inside. It's always easier when you are on the main stand, so you can spin the rear wheel.
Okay.
Other than that, I've actually added the aftermarket windscreen. Okay. So it's about 30 mm higher.
Okay, and it's got a slight lip on top.
Yeah, again, I would say stick with the stock windscreen, right? Unless you're somebody really tall and you're getting the wind blast
onto the helmet.
Then you get extenders which you can clip onto the stock windscreen. Okay. But again, the stock windscreen itself is great. Okay. What I found is the visibility through this is not as good as the stock. So that's why I would say stick with stock for the windscreen. And then of course the RAM mount for your GPS and or phone. Okay. I added these Barkbuster handle your knuckle protectors. It saved me a couple of times. So again, that is a good investment, because this the hand guard itself as a part is quite expensive, and if you drop it or you hit something when you're riding and that breaks, it's going to set you back by quite a lot. Especially the upper section of it, which has the integrated LED indicator. Okay. So to save all that, I mean, this is definitely some insurance that you're taking for yourself. Then I also have for my luggage, I do some amount of touring, sometimes an overnighter. So it's just easy you can put a top case on this or a dry bag, you can just strap it on. You can actually add panniers as well.
So Vinayak, the Ducati Multistrada 1200S experience has been really great for you. So I'm sure you're going to a little bit wary about the Desmo service coming up, but I'm sure you're going to enjoy a whole lot more kilometers on it with a big white smile on your face.
Absolutely, Avin. It's been a great, memorable 3 years, I would say, almost 3 years. And Desmo service, it's like it's a demon hiding there. I'm saving up for that. Hopefully, it doesn't give me the good run continues and there's no maintenance challenges. I think in terms of changing the bike or upgrading, that's not going to happen anytime soon. I just love this machine. I think for whatever I've invested in it, it's really given me a whole sense of pleasure, and I think I'm actually bonded with this bike now. So I feel that it is my motorcycle, and along with the circle of friends that I've made through motorcycling, there's a very good equation that we all have, and all of us obviously love our motorcycles, and that's what biking is about. You experience.
So the multi-stays.
Multi-stays, takes you places, discover new places, have more and more great experiences. So it's a go anywhere bike in terms of you can
Usability,
really
yeah.
have a great time in the hills, the twisties, gut sections. That's where it comes alive. Even though it's a heavy bike, once it has momentum and once you know what it's capable of, you can just throw it into the corner effortlessly.
You can take it, basically take it anywhere.
You take it anywhere. Yeah. And another thing which I forgot to mention is that it actually has a knock sensor.
Okay.
So it's not very fussy about the type of fuel that you put into it.
Okay, very
So-
important. Yeah.
Yeah. So even if you're in some remote part, since we spoke about take it anywhere, and you don't have access to say premium fuel or high octane fuel,
Or
which is
best quality
recommended.
of fuel.
yeah. So what it does is the knock sensor adjusts the ignition timing and things like that. So as far as possible, it's common sense to try and put good fuel into this. But sometimes you're stuck in the wilderness and you don't have great fuel.
Somebody comes with a bottle.
Yeah, you don't have to be scared of it breaking down.
Yeah.
I've had quite a few such situations. No real issues in terms of performance or loss of mileage and things like that. So I think she's been good to me, and I love this bike, and I would recommend it to anybody without blinking an eye.
So guys, as expected, the Multistrada 1200S is a proper do-it-all motorcycle, but it has a strong performance DNA. So if you like the video, please do hit that subscribe button, and thank you for watching.